I think I may have got the
Going live. Got the COVID.
Just keep smoking, you'll be fine.
Well, too much alcohol and CBD. Good CBD.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 198. This week we have Spartan Grown. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm a little starstruck. I'm so glad to be here.
We also have Roger from ILGM.
How y'all doing this week? We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight.
Oh yeah, be a lot of fun. If you guys aren't familiar with this, the show, you can check us out every Tuesday and Thursday, or most Tuesdays and Thursdays, and live on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app if you want to listen to us in audio format. I thought we'd bring Spartan Grown on. I listen to Spartan Grown. He's on a couple of other shows, growing with my fellow growers, as well as the Michigan Grow Brothers or Michigan?
The Michigan Bros Grow Show.
Michigan Bros Grow Show.
Oh, I'll check that out. Michigan Bros Grow Show. Okay. Little tongue twist.
It really is kind of a unique concept, what we've done there with that as far as the YouTube. It's almost like a hub. The Michigan Bros Grow Show. We're basically a group of friends that hang out and smoke, and we're all growers. And we've met through, they started a podcast, Sequence and Skilbo. Originally, it was just an audio podcast, and then they brought it on to YouTube. Well, that spawned a live show we do every Sunday. And then they have little side shows that spotlight different people. So like Monday nights, we have the late night sesh with Skilbo and Red Setter Farms. And then on Saturdays, we have the Frugal Force, where we're concentrating more on trying to save money and not having to, spend tons and tons and tons of dollars on just growing some good food. And I promised to abolish that ask you, Steve. So I'm going to ask you right here on air. He would love for you anytime you have time to come on the show, because he wants to pick your brain on his system. What he's got set up. Imagine a 4x4 tray. It's similar to your dual root zone in a way. Okay, a 4x4 tray. You fill it with hydrogen balls, clay balls, and then you take your fabric pots that you have filled with a living soil of some sort, and you just set them on those balls. And you use that. It's almost like a Soma sip kind of style. And you water and fill up the balls, and the roots grow down through, and you have kind of like a dual root zone. What his question to you would be was he would like to know how he would go about, frugally, try to get some kind of aquaponics into that system. Like, could he exchange maybe the water in there somehow? I don't know. I haven't really figured it out myself, but I told him I'd ask you.
Sure. So, depending on the size, is he doing a grow tent? So it's a 4x4?
He's got different systems. So he's expanded it in many different things. So he's done as little as I think a 2x4. And then he's got like, I think a 4x8 tent that he's doing it in too. So multiple different sizes. It's just the concept is the bottom feed, but I thought it would be kind of a perfect system, because you're kind of doing that same thing, aren't you? With aquaponics, isn't a bottom feed once the roots get established?
Yeah, so the bottom feed, we still do top water, and we can amend that differently, and it gives us some additional level of control beyond what the fish can tolerate. But what you could do if you wanted to easily try to hook that up to your system, if you had, say, a 55-gallon aquarium, or any 4-foot long aquarium or larger, generally a 40-gallon breeder is kind of the smallest for cannabis. You really kind of need to go 55 gallons and above. If you can get into that 75 or 90 gallons or 120 gallons or 110 gallon aquarium, or 150 gallon, 180, 210, or the 300s, those would kind of be much better for growing cannabis. But you can do a hang on the back filter and then run it to a wet dry sump, and then just run that to your flood and drain, or take a tough tote and basically use that as your sump, and then flood and drain off of that, or maybe two of them plumb together. Again, it would depend on the volume of the grow bed. You could daisy chain a few together to get to the volume you needed, but then you could flood and drain that and then use it as your fish filter as well. I've been working with a couple of people on a couple of retrofit kits for aquariums, something that we haven't quite got to the market yet, but it's something that I've worked on with probably 4 separate companies. And for whatever reason or another, they just, never got it off to that final production stage. So we'll see.
Well, that's exciting, man, because I don't even. I've tried to like fish. I like to look at fish, but that's about it, man. I can't. I've tried many fish and I don't like them. But after listening to you talk at the regenerative conference up there, it was around Ann Arbor. I think it was Whitmore Lake was actually where it was. But and when you said that, and I've repeated it on different podcasts where you said like the best regenerative soil, if you look at the diversity of microbes in that bed, and then you compare that with like the worst aquaponics setup, the aquaponics just kills it. And so, I'm a big fan. Huh?
Yeah, it was a NASA funded study. Actually, it was 168% more microbes in terms of biodiversity than the most biodiverse soil.
So yeah, and that's what at home, that's where I like to just play. In my home, I'm not like super strict on every single thing. And of course I'm going organic if I'm going to be that way. And my favorite, my just basic approach is I just hit it with as most diverse microbes as I can. It's got what it needs in the soil already. You know what I mean? And so I just blasted with microbes. And when you said that, I was like, just when I thought I was doing good.
And I'm glad you said that too. And I'd love for us to maybe reemphasize that. Don't ever experiment with a commercial grow. Don't ever experiment with a grow you're counting on to keep your lights on. Make a separate, even if it's all you have for you, because the plant count is 2 plants in a separate tent. Make that your experiment, and make sure you have a second one that you can use as a control, that you do whatever it is you normally do. Otherwise, experimenting with something doesn't really tell you a hell of a lot. But yeah, a lot of people often, I see this constantly with aquaponics, they'll go and experiment with their commercial system, and it's like, are you insane? Like,
even in my home grow, I'm only experimenting under 1 light. That's all you get. No more.
Oh yeah. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Spartan Grown, or Russ, whatever you want to call me, but I live in Michigan, where not only are we medically legal, but we're also just recently rec legal too. And as soon as not as soon as it went medical legal, but I started to be when the medical market was open, you can be what they called caregivers. You could be a home grower, and if you got another person, or say a patient that was sick, they couldn't grow their plants because they're sick. So you get their plants. They assign their 12 plants to you, and you're their caregiver. So you can grow their medicine for them and supply to them. And in Michigan, you're allowed to have up to 5 patients, and then obviously grow for yourself as a patient. So you could have 72 plants if you had a full card as a caregiver.
So you can still do that though.
You can still do that. That's still currently, that's still currently going
so the
on.
Recreational didn't ruin the medical in Michigan. That's what we talked about last year at the conference too. I talked with a whole bunch of you guys up there about, just be careful, because the one thing about Michigan, most people don't know, is the people in Michigan kind of get to control the laws. They get to vote for laws. They don't have just politicians voting for laws. They have control. So I said, make sure you guys are all hyped up about this recreational, but make sure they don't take your medical away, which they've done in so many states, right?
And home grow, and to preserve the home grow rights, because there has been multiple attempts to already try to pull that away, and that's the one I'm the most scared about. Yeah, and then I've made contacts, as a caregiver. I was actually, for like a year, I was researching into, how do I grow, because I wanted to know, I was going to invest money in it as far as building out a grow in my basement. So I wanted to know what the hell I was doing, because I wanted to make it, I wanted it to be a good investment. So about a year of research, and in that research, I found obviously the Dude Grow Show. And as you can see with that, and I've seen Steve on there forever, and I just and that leads me to all these other shows. you know, and I could sit here and name them all off, but I've been inspired by all of them, you know, because that's how I've learned I didn't go to school to be, you know, in botany or anything like that. So I've learned everything from either failing or trying something in my own garden myself with experience, or just from other people, or mostly online, to be 100% honest with you. So that's what I did. And then I started growing and fell in love with it. I was working at a factory job, and I worked a quad shift, which was kind of nice because I worked 3 12-hour shifts, long hours, but then I got 4 days off. Those 4 days were my catch-up days in the garden and everything. So I got really good. And then I made good friends with Michigan Matt from, you know, shout out to Michigan Matt. I'd catch him at like the Michigan Cannabis Cups. I've only missed the very first one, but I've been to every other High Times Cup. And just going to those events and getting yourself out there, you see the same faces again and again, and you just get to talking to people. Well, he had told me at one of the cups that he was looking at maybe working in my neck of the woods, and I said, well, hey, if you ever need help, you let me know. I'll come out there. I'll give you a hand, and I'd love to work in the grow too. And I mean, some time went by. I don't even remember how long it was, but he just hit me up out of the blue. He says, hey, you still interested? And so I went out there, and I'd already been interviewing at other facilities even before that. And, but he hit me up, and as soon as I went in there, when I walked in there, shout out, the place is called Mint and Canico. And actually I'm wearing the shirt right now. You might've seen Scotty Real was wearing it just the other day. And, but as soon as you walk in the place, for one, it was a brand new building. So huge bonus, number one. Because when I went in there, I'm kind of looking at the place because I want signs of this is something that has the same philosophy I do with growing. I don't want to be the factory farmer. I want somebody who gives a damn, you know, about quality. So as soon as you walk in there, you can just see all the different things that you're like, okay, this was influenced. This design was influenced by a grower. You know, there wasn't too many. The only complaint I can even come up with is that the veg is upstairs. So I have to go upstairs. If I could have one thing, is everything on the one floor would be wonderful. But, you know, other than that, it's just a joy. Every flower room has floor drains, you know, it's got the sliding tables. So, I mean, it's a joy to work there. It's a joy to work with people that grow the same way you do. And then I'm learning a lot. Both the owner and the COO are above me as far as I'm concerned as growers. So I love to put myself in those situations, just like I am right now on this podcast. And I just like to get around people that know way more than me on different things so that they rub off on me. You know what I mean? That's how I learn. I don't learn so much by reading something in a book. I need to just like get real life interaction, and then it seems to stick better. So that's why I love sitting there. And then I'm still growing at home now, but Michigan's dumb law, when they wrote it into the law, if you work for a commercial facility, you have to sign away your caregiver rights. So you can no longer be a caregiver because I work there, but I'm still, because we're rec legal, I still am allowed to grow 12 plants in my home grow. So that's what I mean when I said earlier to you guys that, you know, at home, it's like kind of my play because I only have 12 plants and I can just kind of screw around with things at home. So I think that's about covers it. Oh, and then I'm big into podcasting. So, I mean, ever since I can't remember, I watched a lot. That's where I get all my information, you know, and those long 12-hour shifts at work. What do you think I was doing? I was listening. You guys are in my ear. You know what I mean? I was listening to podcasts the whole time. Otherwise, I'd be going nuts in these factories with no windows, you know? So eventually, you know, from hanging out and chat and making these connections and meeting the Michigan Bros Grow Show, shout out to them. They started up a basically YouTube network, and it got me comfortable on the camera to be able to reach out and jump on other shows. And now I'm just like addicted. So I just love going on. I just love talking about cannabis. You know what I mean? If I can just talk about cannabis, I'm here. Or even soil. We don't even talk about cannabis. We can talk about soil. I'll talk about growing anything. Let's talk, man. You know, that's the way I am. And I like just to be positive, because I kind of came from a bleak past, like growing up in the, you know, the same story everybody else has. I don't want to get into it, but, you know, divorced parents and all this, and working in a factory, struggling through that, and it's like a depressing kind of thing. And now it feels like it's like totally switched for me. It's like I go to work and I'm around thousands of plants. I mean, we have a 3,000 plant license, and because we're both medically and recreational licensed there. So we have 3,000 plants. So it's just such a psyche boost to walk in every day. Instead of walking into a cave with artificial light and no windows to the outside, you're like basically outside. And the plants are blowing in the breeze. It's funny, I just made a post about this today on my Instagram. I just said, in these depressing times, I look around and I see the plants blowing in the breeze, and I just want to stop and smell the flowers. And how can you not smile? You know what I mean? It's a blessing. And I'm just trying to enjoy every day, because I know it's not something everybody enjoys. So I'm trying to be happy about it.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been enjoying the spring rain today. Found a bunch of cinnabar chanterelles and golden chanterelles. Oh yeah.
That is awesome. I've never seen those cinnamon ones like that before.
Yeah, they're awesome. So yeah, loving the spring weather. So tell us more about the Michigan's grow scene. You said it was a plant count based, but tell us a little bit more about what's popular out there right now, strain wise, and maybe some of the different pests or some other unique things you guys have going on up there in the Michigan grow scene.
Yeah. So for right now, honestly, if 100% honest to you right now, in Michigan, as far as the commercially grown and the they're not called dispensaries. It's another weird thing. For some reason, you can't call them dispensaries up here. They're provisioning centers. But the provisioning centers, pretty much they don't ask you they don't care what the strain name is. So I could tell you that this and this and that's popular, but they just want weed because they can't keep it on the shelves. That's pretty much what it's like right now, because everybody's staying at home and there's nothing else to do. But what's really super popular in Michigan, and it has been for a long time, is we like our Gorilla Glue up here. I mean, Gorilla Glue or Gorilla Glue crosses, that's what everybody likes, because it's like for pain, man. It just annihilates pain. And that's what people have up here from, we're a bunch of factory workers up here. So, or a lot of us are, or farmers, either way, we beat up our bodies. And so Gorilla Glue seems to be super popular. Wedding cake seems to be pretty popular. A lot of the hype strains everywhere else seem to be pretty hyped here too. But honestly, I don't think there's a lot of people walking into a dispensary and walking out because they didn't have the strain they were looking for. I think they're just going in there, they're picking off a menu, and they're just taking, what they have to take. I just don't know how much. All I know is that the last time I talked to the boss, he was like, on harvest day, it's his job. The owner, he's got to call to see, once I got to back it all up. It's not as easy as that. We have to send it out for testing and wait. And it's probably about a couple of weeks before we get the test results back. But when that whole process is done, then you can actually sell it to the provisioning center. And it's less than a day, the whole harvest is gone. So, and we harvest in each room, it's between 40 to 60 pounds, depending on what strain we're growing in there, and it's gone. So we're not having to sit on it right now, but hopefully eventually it'll evolve to where there's enough growers to keep up with the supply. The special case kind of right now is that the rec just became legal. So there's not a lot of rec licenses approved yet. So really, I mean, there's a lot of hope yet. Once this gets going, this is really the first year, and then this COVID thing, slammed everything. So
yeah,
I'm sure by the end of the year, we'll be about where we were at the beginning of the year. And then hopefully things will pick up as far as people producing more and prices, and everything's going to come down and it'll get better, hopefully. But so I think the market's strong, but I also think the market for caregivers is strong. I think we're losing some caregivers because of the ridiculous stipulation that if you work in some of the commercial, like if you work in a commercial grow, you can't be a caregiver. But if you work in a dispensary, you can be a caregiver. So explain that. We don't want professional growers to grow to grow weed for the patients.
They don't want to bring in spider mites from home to the grow. No, I'm just kidding.
But I can grow rec-weed at home.
Oh man. Well,
No,
that
no,
brings
isn't
us
that always the best though? And you got an employee comes to work and they're like, "Oh, I have spider mites at home," and you're just like,
Oh,
"Did you go in your room before you came to work? Please say no."
Yeah.
Well, that brought up a question that that I didn't think of until just then. So, like, I knew what Colorado used to do with, and I'm not sure about California. I think it was all over different depending on county or region. But what is the testing like when you bring in cannabis to a facility? Do they put it through the microscopes and stuff like that, or
we have some of the most strict.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Yeah.
On the medical side. The rec side's a little less strict, but it's not that much less strict.
A little, just like a quarter of a joint. You got.
Well, it's about all the same, except for the big difference I would say is on the microbial counts. There's a huge difference in there. On the medical side, it's still, I believe, well, it was at 10,000. What is the CFU? Is it CFU for microbes?
For microns.
Yeah, that's the problem is they don't care about what microbes.
Microbials?
Yeah, microbials.
10,000 colony forming units.
CFU. Okay, yeah, CFU. So it was set at 10,000 at the medical. At the rec side, it was set at 100,000. They did move med up to 40,000, I believe, but it's still pretty stringent because they don't. It's just total. So that it doesn't matter if it's yeast that's floating around in the air when they were, or if the lab tech sneezed on it or something. They don't see what microbes they detect. It's just total. So it really leaves a lot of products that you don't want to use anymore. Even for example, like a Botanigard, if you were to have, say, for example, thrips, you're asking about pests. Thrips seem to pop up here right now. I think it's about everywhere from what I'm hearing. And, Botanigard, Bavaria bassiana is pretty nice to be able to spray on the plants to, go all alien on them and rip out, but get them with the fungus. But now we're scared to even use something like that because is that going to come up as a CFU on a flower count later in testing? We don't know. So we have to be what we're doing right now, like our main plan or our main battle attack is all sprays in veg. Once we flip to flower, actually we move them to flower because there's flower rooms. Once they go into flower, the only thing that goes in flower room is predators. And we use 3 different predator sachets, I think they call them, that hang on the plants.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Michigan Matt lives in the same town that there's a insectary. So he actually picks them up at the insectary on the way to work.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So like we get them super fresh, really fresh.
Yeah,
really fresh and alive. And we get it's like every 2 weeks we're filling a room full of 3 different mixes. So we're trying to cover all the bases. And then we also, like every twice a week, we have to actually, we don't normally hand water, but twice a week we'll hand water in. We'll mix in 55-gallon drums or recharge and mammoth pea. And then we also do nematodes. So that nematodes helps us in the soil where the other predators, they're basically our soil predators. And then plant predators are already taken care of with the sachets that we're hanging. So with all those, that tends to solve most of our problems. And it's pretty cool. It does take a little while, obviously, to hang 3 sachets per plant. And, we have 3 tables and each table's got around 40 plants. So what's that? 120 plants a room. So that'd take a while to do that, but we knock it out a couple hours and we're done, man. We're not in there spraying, you know what I mean? It's probably about the same time it would take to spray.
That's cool. Yeah, I asked because there was places in Colorado where they would run through a microscopic, like a really high dollar microscope.
Oh yeah, I didn't even answer your question. Sorry.
If you had bug shit or anything on they just turned the whole thing down. It's
yeah,
like
so
you go to Whole Foods, if you got one rotten or one starting to rot little pepper, they discount your whole box and send it to the food bank, and you don't get paid. So
yeah, I didn't even answer your question, but yeah, I can actually be specific because I've got it in front of you for me right here. So it's called the full compliance testing package, and these prices aren't even accurate anymore because they've gone up.
Of course.
But yeah, they were starting at right around $400 for the whole package, but it includes cannabinoid profile, water activity and moisture test, pesticide analysis, heavy metal screen, microbial screen, mycotoxin screen. And then they also do include photos of scope, where they scope it with their, obviously it looks like a microscope because it's pretty damn close.
So what's the percentage of the plant that it sounds like they're doing a package where you test parts of your grow, and if you pass that, the whole grow is okay.
Yeah,
right?
so it goes by your weight. So for every their batch, each one is a batch. So they'll take a sample. I think it's nine grams, maybe. I can't remember. I could get the numbers if you.
I was asking in general.
I believe it's like 9 grams per batch, and the batch is 15 pounds. So if it's 1 pound, that's a batch. Up to 15, that's still one batch. And then if you had 16 pounds, that's 2 batches. So
and they take 9 grams out of that and they test that. And if it passes, you pass.
Yep.
Okay.
Each batch can pass individually. So each 15 pounds is tested individually. So with all of those. So it's going to be getting through the pesticide. You'll get all those individually for each batch.
And that's 400. Well, that's 400. That's pretty interesting. Okay, that's why I asked, because that's the problem with this too, with it not being federally legal, is the fact that the testing is all over the place. That's why I was so curious to see, with you guys getting it and having one of the best states at this point, in my opinion, to grow in, but on all sides. I think is one of the, I wouldn't say, I hate to say it's a liberal state or anything like that, for God's sake, but
I still think that the best place to grow is Oklahoma. We don't have a plant count.
Yeah.
We're literally throwing 5 acres up of THC this year. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, tell me another state where I can just decide to do that and just do it, and it's legal because we have a license on the property. Like, you know.
Well, then, Steve, what is the testing facility? What do you have in comparison to what we just learned from Russ about Michigan? How do you have to go through testing to sell that in Oklahoma, or is it wide open because it's not medical?
Potency and microbial and mycotoxins.
Yeah, but what about the
Pretty
pests
simply.
and like bugs on
batch testing is every 10 pounds.
Every 10 pounds. So it was
Correct.
15 in Michigan, 10's there. And
every state's a little bit different. Some states are 20, some states are 10.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's less than 10. Someone can correct me in chat if I'm wrong. Spartan, there was a question from chat earlier on. I missed it, and I was scrolling up to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I saw it here. It says, I'd really like to ask Spartan Grown the different methods he's grown, and then eventually maybe how and when he's likes to use potassium in flower. Thank you.
Okay, I actually, at home, I prefer to grow, like, if I could just do what I want and like grow with my heart, I like to just grow organically. That's my favorite. And I love sip containers, which, sub irrigation, because it takes the guesswork out of watering, and the plant never runs out of water. And I love how the plant grows when it never runs out of water. I do let the reservoir empty, but at that point, when the reservoir goes to empty, the entire 1.5 cubic feet is still saturated at 100%. So it gives me like days, but every time it empties, I just fill it right back up. So I just really love that aspect of it. I think there's an importance to that. And then, what was it? So I like organically growing with sip containers. Oh, potassium and flower. I like to actually use potassium. In fact, I don't even hardly care about phosphorus in flower.
That's me too. That's unusual.
Yeah.
Almost everybody says you gotta. I think you need the phosphorus at the changeover.
Yeah, I don't.
At the transition phase, but then I go more potassium and a lot less phosphorus myself.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
After week 2 or 3 of flower, you don't need any more phos. The plant's got all it needs.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen report after report after report that even at a phosphorus deficiency, it didn't even negatively affect yield. So why do I care about phosphorus in flower? So yeah, so I don't even, but I like to give it a little boost in potassium towards the middle. So it's almost like my bloom booster or whatever. I do like potassium there. So
I love that.
Probably week 3, week 4. I'll do a little top dress with some potassium, but I don't usually top dress past week 4, unless it's a really long flowering plant that I think is going to run out somewhere. I just like to use a bag mix that I one made right here in Michigan, M3 mix. It's really good. I love it. And so I'll use that. And then I just address the little deficiencies I see, or, you tweak each cultivar. There's little tweaks for each one. And I just address that with top dress, because I don't trust myself with teas, because I've learned enough. I used to use teas, but then I learned enough that I don't know shit about teas, and I could be doing damage. So I don't have the tool. I don't have the microscope to be able to check my teas. So I'm not going to just be shooting from the hip when it comes to that. So I just top dress. And that's how
there's some books out there that'll explain how you can develop different NPK ratios using compost. Rodello, right? Wrote what his book of compost. It's like a dictionary about compost, like with the
awesome.
1,100 pages. My partner Ryan, who might be watching the show, I gave it to him because I'm legally blind, and he reads books. I love it. I got a partner that actually reads books, Steve. He doesn't walk around with his face in the telephone all day. I mean, I freaking love it. But I gave it to him, but it actually, the book is all about everything you could put together to make a certain NPK ratio. So it's, the information is out there, Russ. So look up that up the book. I'll find it for you, and I'll find out what it is exactly.
Yeah, I'll check that out, because that's really super interesting. I have a worm bin too, and I really enjoy. I feed them. What I do is I have a leaf blower that in the fall you can turn it around, and it actually will suck it up like a vacuum and mulch the leaves. So I'll take my leaves and I just put them in a 55-gallon drum in the garage. And that keeps me with enough carbon basically for the worms. So I feed them that, and then I take junk mail that I get in the mail that's all paper. I don't give them like the plastic stuff, but the paper I'll throw it through a paper shredder, and I throw that in there for carbon. And then I'll use the cannabis leaves for some greens, and then just like kitchen scraps. So if I have like a banana peel or some melon rind or something, and then I do all my inputs. I love doing like my top dresses or inputs. I love just throwing like a BioLive from Down to Earth. I love throwing in like a scoop of that, or maybe some oyster shell to get a little calcium in there. And I like to have the worms process that, and then I'll use that to top dress.
I'm a big fan, especially if you need it something instantly available in flower, using langbonite, which is potassium magnesium sulfate. So you're getting a little bit of sulfur, and you're getting the magnesium and the potassium. You generally need all of those things in flower. So I like to use that in combination with other nutrients in place of a monopotassium phosphate. I find it's much more appropriate for flower. And again, that can also be sourced in an organic OMRI, naturally occurring OMRI sourced, such as Back to Nature or Back to Roots or whatever, the Back to Earth or whatever the
Down
hell
to Earth, yeah.
Down to Earth. There you go. Down to Earth.
That's interesting, because when I used the hydroponics, I used the NPK, and now you say you use, what'd you call it? It's like backwards. It was inverted.
Down to Earth.
No, what Steve said about
langbonite, potassium magnesium sulfate.
Potassium. So that'd be PK,
so it's PKS.
All right.
Yeah, it's like potassium Epsom salt.
It would be potassium.
Oh yeah, okay,
sulfate. It would be.
Well, that'd be magnesium.
KMGS actually.
KMGS, so it does have magnesium in it too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wonder, like, I like using.
Wow, that's a super thing.
Epsom salt that has potassium in it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I like using Epsom salt too in flour, and I could eliminate that if I had some langbonite.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like it a lot for that, especially for flour. We had another question from chat. It says, can you use a 50 by 100 pond for aquaponics? You absolutely can. You're going to have to, 1, aerate it, and then 2, find a way to separate the solids, or at the very least, heavily stock it and aerate it, and then pump it up into your beds artificially. It can be tricky doing it. I'm actually working on a series. I'm doing something like you're suggesting there on a bigger scale, doing 1 acre with 5 acres, and we'll be doing more series of videos on that as well. But right now, with all the rain, it is just an absolute mud fest out there right now, so we can't do much of anything.
So that was Do you see Ryan Wham it said, no, I got the wrong person. Somebody else, I can't find it now, but somebody
Ryan
said, what
Wham
about
is my
Himalayan
partner.
salt? Himalayan salt. You'd have to really dilute that, wouldn't you? You couldn't do. I'd
I'm
imagine
not
there'd be a lot of
sure on
traces
the,
in it.
I don't know on the sodium content with that. Again, it would depend on the sodium. Langbonite's a naturally occurring form of salt, which is potassium magnesium sulfate, which is, again, can be sourced in Omri from multiple vendors, making a great option regardless of what type of certification you have.
And is it just worry about, make sure you source at least a clean product, like find somebody like a good name brand so you don't have to worry about heavy metals, especially here in Michigan. That's something they test for. So any kind of mineral, just be wary of a heavy metal. It's creeping in there sometimes.
Another thing to really look forward to that most people don't understand is if you got some kind of legitimate farm, you can go to agricultural suppliers instead of hydro stores or local garden stores. And you will find two things. You can find just about anything we ever talk about. And the second thing is you can buy a 50-pound bag and it costs cents on the dollars and you'll never run out of it. You'll be able to put it in.
It costs the same amount as the 1 liter you get with that's 99% water at the grocery store.
Yeah. Well, you can buy a 50-pound bag of dolomitic lime for like $2, but that's common sense for anybody that does super soil or something, but you can also buy a 10-pound bag of dolomitic lime online somewhere for $10.
Got another question from Chad on when can I put my plants outside? I put my plants out already and they started to flower. The earliest I would suggest putting anything outside in most places in North America would be this week. There's a handful of people who do it a little bit earlier, especially if you're starting from seed. You can get away with a little bit longer, a little bit earlier, because you're going to have that kind of beginning period anyway. It's going to get you through that. But generally for clones, especially depending on the light schedule you had the clones in, you should be getting them down to 15, 16 hours. If you're going to put them out in North America, maybe even 14 hours. If you can keep them there, before you put them out, if they're at 24 or at 18 and you put them out there, they're going to go to flower. Like, they're not used to that, right? It's a big difference. So,
which is why we recommend not using 24. We like 15 or 16 more, especially because you get much better root production at a shorter photo period than you do at 24.
That's a super good point. I was really surprised when I looked at the daylight that we get in Michigan. The sunset, you subtract the hours, and we never get 18. Never do we get 18 hours of sunlight, ever. Doesn't matter what day it is. Good point. People that are 24-hour cloning it and then trying to do stuff outside, man, you better have a light out there. You better have a supplemental light, for the last couple hours, because those things are going to be flowering. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you is, get a light on it. That's all you can do.
If you ease into it, you'll have an easy transition. If you shock the shit out of them, that's what you're going to get. And that could be Hermes too.
Yeah, I used to have to supply, I didn't have to. I used to supply clones to some outdoor growers around here. And, there'd be guys with full carts, 72 plants, and want to put whole flats of clones that have barely rooted yet outside under the sun to try to acclimate them to the sun. I'm like, no, you guys, what are you doing, guys? I was like, just these are indoor small plants. If you're trying to match the outdoors, you're not trying to put them out there right away. You're trying to gradually get them to that point. You don't want to just shock them from 18 hours, for example, 18 hours on all day long, get really used to that, and then go into an area where you're getting 13, 14 hours. Of course, you're going to start flowering. You're thinking, oh shit, the days are getting shorter. There's no more sun. So just try to think more like a plant. Too many people are just accept what people tell them to do. You know what I mean? Too many people say, oh, you should flush, or, oh, you should. I'm not picking on flushing. I'm picking on everything that we do. Just research into what you're doing and then make your own decision. Just at least know why you do something. You know what I mean? I hate it when I'm doing something and somebody comes up to me and says, hey, why do you do that? And I don't have an answer for them. Then I feel dumb. You know what I mean? So always ask why, and you'll learn a lot of stuff.
Well, I got one for you to say it comes naturally to me.
Hey, there you go.
That's just how the way it just seems natural to me.
Usually I give a cop out. I'll be like, well, the plant told me to.
Yeah. And that's true too. It's like when you talk about how much phosphorus you need in flower. You know, the plant doesn't
Yeah.
say I need phosphorus, so why add some? You know.
Getting so distracted by chat.
Yeah, I want to add. Hey Ryan, how about post the name of that compost book I gave you? All right, sorry, because I wanted to tell you the name of it so you could get it. And so if he's watching and paying attention, maybe
Yeah, other great compost books would be, you know, any of Jeff Lowenfeld's books are also great for learning about,
yeah,
you know,
we've got
what's
all of those. Yeah, those are great. But what teaming with microbes, teaming with nutrients, teaming with fungi.
Yep.
That's three of the most popular and newest books he's got. Everybody's got those. I got them. Russ probably has them. Ryan's got them.
Oh, yeah.
Steve's got them.
We had another question from chat, asked if you are Spartan level high and do you use shampoo on your beard?
I'm not quite to Spartan level high yet, but I've had 2 edibles and I did have 1 bowl. Well, I'll catch up and get a few more. I'll get there. What was the other one? Shampoo in my beard? No, I use conditioner in my beard. Why would I want to put shampoo in it? I got to keep this thing soft, man. Shampoo will dry it out.
It's showing his age. That's what you think. The shampoo dripping down there, dried up. You
We had another question from chat. Can you recommend a good compost tea recipe?
know. he said he sucks at compost already.
No, I've done compost tea.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'll get into it.
Sorry, man.
Okay.
That's
So first of all, I have, it's a pet peeve of mine when people start telling me, well, check out my compost tea recipe. All I want to see in a compost tea recipe, if that's what this is some sort of compost, water, and a tiny, tiny, minute amount of food source for the microbes. I don't want to see a bunch of, all these added bullshit that they want. They start adding in alfalfa and adding in kelp and adding in. It's like, are we doing a nutrient tea or are we trying to brew microbes? What are we trying to do here?
Good point.
You know what I mean? So when I did it, I would use only a compost. Sometimes I'd like to mix my compost. So I'd use like half worm compost that I had made myself at home. And then the other half was like outside compost that you have outside. What do you call that? Thermophilic compost pile compost. So one was worm compost and one was a heated thermophilic compost. Mixed it half and half and put it in a bag and threw it in the water with air stones. And I bought, you brought up raw NPK nutrients. They make a molasses that's powdered. I liked theirs because I could get just a tiny little pinch and throw it in there, like the tiniest amount. You don't need a lot of molasses because this is why I say it, because you're going to get a huge population of microbes. And if you get a giant population of microbes, it's going to be those, I equate it to carbs. Like when you eat sugar, you get that fast acting bloom. And if you add that into your soil bed, you're going to get a huge bloom of microbes that are eventually going to fucking die. And then now you're going to have either they're going to release a bunch of nutrient right there and burn the shit out of your plants possibly, or if they're trying to consume so much food, like there's way more food than what they need, like people like to put extra molasses in. If you're watering molasses into your soil, just don't do it. But if there's a ton of molasses there they have to process, then they might be actually drawing, requiring nutrient from the soil for that to process that, all that extra food that you just added down there. So I just don't like it. I know it's not popular in the scene, but I just hate when people.
Well, no, so there's some truth to that. So I absolutely like using brown sugar if I'm going to do a compost tea and doing, again, smaller doses. The only time I would be against that would be as a finisher. The last maybe 3 waterings I do, I'll add, a few pounds of sugar, to a room, maybe 3 pounds to a 1,500 or 2,000 square foot room. Just enough to basically feed those microbes to get rid of any minerals that are left in there, basically to kind of increase their population to power through anything that's left, basically as a microbial form of flushing, at least in theory. But not so much, cutting, flushing it in the sake that people normally do with trying to like dump water through the soil and all that kind of stuff. but maybe, you know, so that's worked really well for me. But when we do mineralization processes, we're doing 3-day or 7-day or 14-day mineralization for fish waste. Well, that's the one time they'll actually use molasses. But again, we're doing a 3, 5, or 14-day thing. That sugar has a long time, and it's being actively aerated and stirred. And you know, I want it to actually kind of stay in there longer, and I'm using it for that purpose of that longer brew time. And that longer breakdown. Whereas if I'm doing a quick compost tea, or maybe I want my labs ferment to go faster, maybe I'm a commercial grower and suddenly I spotted PM somewhere and my labs culture is really small, I need to suddenly ramp up production, I can add a little sugar just to speed up you know, how quickly I can bulk out that labs culture. But you don't want to add too much of that, or you're going to totally, you know, screw the whole thing up. So you know, there is a place for it, but absolutely it's often heavily overused, and people overuse molasses when really they should be using brown sugar or some kind of other sugar in the raw, rather than something that's going to take a lot longer to be available. That was awesome. There's another thing from chat here. It says The Complete Book of Composting was the name of the book.
Oh, you're muted, Roger.
1 second, trying to pop back up here. What are the main symptoms of potassium deficiency, and should you use a calcium product with langbonite to balance the CalMag ratio? I'll let you go first, and then I'll go with that.
Could you say that again? He said.
Oh, sure. What are the main symptoms of a potassium deficiency, and should you use calcium product with langbonite to balance the CalMag ratio? At least as far as the CalMag ratio part, it would depend on what your calcium already was. You know, are you in ratio already, or aren't you? You know, you're going to have to test that.
Yeah, as I said, there's no way to tell what your ratio was there. And then before I name things for sure as, for example, potassium deficiency, or no, was it potassium? Was it? I think it was potassium. He said. I like to look up, and I just learned this from Dude Grows, is that Mulder's chart, so I can make sure it's not something I've added, because a lot of times you have what they call an antagonist. So if you add too much of something, it'll lock something out no matter how much you put in. So it could look like it's a potassium deficiency, and you could be dumping all the potassium you want on it, and it's not helping. Why that is consult Mulder's chart. I don't know off the top of my head what a antagonist for potassium is, but
yeah, I don't have them memorized. I always go back and reference the chart as well.
But whatever it is, it could be that something that you've added has caused the deficiency. So that's usually what I find to be the issue, is because everybody likes to, you know, add things because they think, well, a little bit's good, then a lot's better.
Yeah, so one of my favorite examples for Mulder's chart, and this applies to hydroponics and aquaponics, is, say I have a UV sterilizer, okay, and I have an aquatic environment, a hydroponics or aquaponics. This won't count for soil, but this similar type of scenario can absolutely happen in soil. So if I have a UV sterilizer on my aquaponic nutrients or hydroponic nutrients, that will lock up the iron, the manganese, and the I can't remember what the other one is, the zinc. Okay, now when I lock out iron, manganese, and zinc, and in particular zinc and manganese, what happens is that actually locks out phosphorus, causing the plant actually to turn purple, especially in tomatoes. I've seen this in aquaponic systems quite regularly when people treat them like an aquarium, or they try to overly sterilize the system. The plants will actually turn purple, or you'll end up with, you know, pretty obvious phosphorus deficiencies regardless of the crop. And it's actually not a phosphorus deficiency at all. The phosphorus is completely unavailable because the manganese and the zinc have been completely been made unavailable to the plant, along with the very low levels of iron. And it's, you know, because those are low, the plant can't uptake any potassium. I'm sorry, phosphorus. So it'll show that phosphorus deficiency. So it's really quite strange how, how that, but again, if I just look at the plant, I'm going to say, oh, it's a phosphorus deficiency. And I'm going to throw, monopotassium phosphate, or I'm going to throw, some other phosphorus booster in there, and it's not going to do anything. And then I'm going to get frustrated, and then I'm going to add more. And then I'm going to end up building up a phosphorus buffer that's going to artificially buffer my pH. And then I'll have, pH problems. And then now I'm going to have, now I'm going to cause a whole new set of lockout issues. And now you have no idea what's going on, because you don't have, most home growers, and to be frankly with you, most commercial growers don't have access to tissue sampling to do that, or, better, so if you can't test your water, test your runoff, test your soil, you're flying dark, right? So, you have no idea what's in front of you. So this is where something like Mulder's chart, where I can look and say, okay, well, this has been my nutrient dose in the last 2 months, or here's, excuse me, here's the minerals in my water, in an aquaponics or hydroponic system, and I can say, oh, well, these are way out of ratio. Oh, well, this nutrient's been locked out. This is kind of, think of it like a magic decoder ring for mineral deficiencies, especially in when you're dealing with liquid nutrient solutions. It can really make a lot. But the important thing to think about this is, and everyone kind of can grasp this concept with minerals, right? Like how I love to describe it, and let me grab one so we can kind of go over it visually.
It really is like a secret decoder, because it will make your life so easy. Or not, it'll make it way easier, because it really makes you look in the right direction without running around with a chicken with your head cut off.
Okay, so imagine this disc is Mulder's chart, right? You have calcium, molybdenum, nitrogen, magnesium, iron, blah, 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 okay? All the way around. We want this to be a top, okay? So as far as the camera is concerned, this is level.
Close enough.
So we want this to be even, right? Now, if I have too much of two nutrients, it's going to cause this to be imbalanced. Now we're tipping, it's tilting, and now we're getting out of balance. And as soon as that gets out of balance, that's when we're going to start to see colored leaves. We're going to see deficiencies in growth. And that's why it's important, where if you raise one nutrient, like someone else commented with a question about raising with langbonite, do we need to raise calcium? Well, if your calcium was already very high, no, you wouldn't. But if your calcium wasn't, you absolutely would have to add a calcium carbonate or a calcium sulfate to balance that out, or maybe even a dolomite, although that's not as available as calcium sulfate, which is gypsum, or a calcium carbonate, which is aragonite. Depending on what you're doing. So think of it that way, but also think of your microbes that way. Okay. Think of it like trichoderma and mycorrhizae and rhizobacter and acetobacter and all those. You want them that same way to be a flat top. And if you have too much of a population, too much trichoderma, too much lactobacillus, too much whatever, you're going to cause a root fungus problem. You're going to cause some other negative growth problem or nutrient issue, or even kill the plant outright, or create an environment that allows other pests to move in readily. Think both your minerals and your microbes, think of them in that same kind of ratio way, and kind of almost like a top that you're trying to keep spinning at all times and keeping it level.
That's super important you bring that up too, because that's why I have to say again and again to people, is like, they always ask me the question, hey, can I put recharge in a tea and brew it and get a ton of recharge? Or can I brew, whatever? And I'm like, man, you're going to be brewing who knows what. It's already in it's already in the right order, the right concentrations that they want it. You start brewing that, then who's ever faster, bigger, better, faster is going to take over, and you're going to be all that. You're no longer recharge. You're just whatever, trichoderma probably, or who knows. But
I wanted to touch something back on when, you were talking about compost tea. It's not this tea or that, but see, and this is something though, if you compost alfalfa into your compost, that's how you add it. You don't add it. That you didn't really, I was on to jump in there, but y'all were moving on, and that's it.
So there's two mechanisms with the alfalfa. One, there's a lot of plant growth accelerating microbes that, well, not necessarily accelerate, but plant beneficial microbes that affect plant growth, probably is the better way to put it, that will readily feed, as well as phosphorus solubilizing bacteria that love to feed on alfalfa meal. So that can increase the populations of those. There's also certain hormones in alfalfa itself that can actually act as a PGR. And there's some questions as to whether some products out there have been using those, but yeah,
Well,
anyways, that's a whole
well,
separate
that's
thing.
awesome, and that's I'm glad you said that, because but I wanted to say that's not exact. I didn't mean it like that, like it should be alfalfa. I was saying in regards to him, Russ was talking about, if you're making compost tea, make compost tea. You don't start adding alfalfa and this.
Well, see,
and
I would,
that, this and that. So
see, I
whatever you
disagree.
might add, you would do that in your compost, not when you were making your tea.
Well, see, I would disagree. See, I love to use those
Okay.
kinds of stuff in teas, and I actually have a whole rabbit hole that I'll be going. I don't necessarily want to get down the rabbit hole this episode. We'll probably do a separate episode strictly on this because of the depth of the topic. But I'm covering this really in depth in the book that I'm working on what. So, okay, so everyone's familiar with like KNF, everyone's familiar with like FPJ and labs and all that. Everyone knows that certain plants are really good for compost and bioavailability of certain minerals and nutrients. I've managed to dig up a couple of multiple different really good tables on the mineral content of quite a wide range of different North American and then some non-North American plants that are quite common throughout most of the world. And look at actually the content of it. And then now we've been tinkering with some ferments and FPJs, but even just based on the content and working with the ferment work, trying to give people an option where they can straight look at something and go, oh, well, I need a bottle. I need to do NPK or MO or MG or MN or whatever. And then look at what they could grab off of a property or off of a list of plants and then go ferment that or go make a tea out of it or go do this and actually unlock that heavy mineral amount that those plants happen to content and actually use those not just as teas but also as minerals, so kind of hybridizing the old concepts. But I definitely wouldn't add mineral salts to teas except right at the end, right? So if you're going to do a microbial, brew them separately and combine them right at the time of application. I am a huge fan of applying microbes with minerals in order to accelerate uptake. I find that it's a night and day difference in how quickly you'll get a plant response rate. And it's something that I've been a huge fan of for a long time.
That's important though, that you combine them at the end. I think that's important. You combine them at the end. It's not brew them all together for the whole duration of the brew.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's a nice point.
Separately and combining at the time of application or mixing right at the end and then applying. Yep. So what are some of the other different things you'd like to tell us about the commercial scene up there in Michigan?
Honestly, I live in a bubble, man. I just go in there and I just try to do the best I can do and ignore what everybody else is doing, because I don't know, we're just such a good crew in there, man. It's like going and hanging out with your friends, man. That's really what it's like. And I think that's what it takes to be a successful team. You can't go in there with giant egos. You have to go in there like it's the team that's important, not yourself. And when everyone has that attitude, and even like I said, we're a 5-person, I don't know if I did say this, but it's a 5-person crew. And that includes, including the owner and the COO who are in there working with us when they can, like right next to us, doing the same things that we're doing. It's not like, the owner is, in a business suit with a clipboard, in a, you see him in a window above you or something. So it's totally different. So for me, I think my experience is going to be something that's unique to the scene. I don't think it's the norm, because, before all this shutdown went down, we would leave for lunch all together and we'd go to a restaurant or whatever. And we'd drive past other facilities with 2 to 3 times the amount of cars in the parking lot for the same, facility. And it's just like, you shake your head and you're like, well, what's going on over there? But, so for me, it's a joy, but that being said, it's still work. It's still physical labor. We grow in cocoa. So we use Royal Gold, Tupper is what we're using. We started out using can of cocoa, but we ended up our very first harvest. After a long going through just about everything, but our first harvest we failed for heavy metal, and I believe it was cadmium, if I remember correct. And long story short, we tracked it back to the can of cocoa, and we didn't get much help from those folks there, so we switched brands. So now we're using Tupper, and we've had successful harvest after successful harvest with them. So we don't see any reason to change. And but you do have to carry those bags on your shoulder up 2 flights of stairs, and then fill up 140 pots. So there's physical labor. So I don't want to make it sound like it's just all fun and games, but it's cool to work with a crew of people that everybody knows their job. And basically we have a whiteboard when you walk in, and it says, this is what we need to get done today. And then everybody just tackles it, and we just knock it out. And honestly, it's a joy because it seems like you're part of a team legitimately, and everybody's got the same goal in mind, instead of you're worrying about this guy stabbing you in the back or what this guy's saying over to the here, or none of that. So I came from working a factory background, so it's like night and day different, union job too. So I mean, politics involved too. So I'm just so much more stress, and I couldn't be happier. But I mean, unless you have specific questions, I could just wax on and on about working there.
Well, I can tell you this.
Tell us more about the IPM in Michigan. What are you guys doing for your IPM up there?
Okay, so our IPM starts right at the front door. So if there's a guest or somebody that's coming in, we have the little booties you put on over your shoes. In fact, we have actually extra sandals and shoes there. So you just take off your outside shoes and put on these ones. And then we have booties if there's somebody who doesn't want to wear those sandals or shoes. Then we also have those, I think it's called Tyvek, whatever, those white suits that that covers you all the way up and it has a hood.
Yeah, Tyvek, you use it to wrap a house in too. Yeah.
Yep. We have those for like if we have somebody coming in to work on the building or something like that. We put them in, we seal them up as best we can. Gloves, all that good stuff. As far as employees, we walk into a changing room and we have a uniform service. It's just like hospital scrubs. There's a black hospital scrubs. So when we come in, we don't wear our street, we change out of our street clothes. We change out of our street shoes. We have our own shoes that we brought in new and they've never left the building. And so we put those on. We put on our new clothes. We have, hats that stay there, and our glasses. And then when we leave there, before you even get to the very first flower room, you walk over a sticky pad that will clean the bottom of your shoes. And then you walk into a bleach pit, basically. It's a little deep, just to make sure you're disinfected too. And we just don't want bugs. and then you're through. Now, as far as IPMs in the veg cycle, we run through, we have a rotating schedule of things that we'll spray in there. Mostly, like, we actually just got some optic foliar in to try out. So that's one thing that we have. Some attack we have in there. We haven't used that yet, but we'll go through things like, it depends on if we have a pest issue or don't. If it's just an IPM protocol, then it's just like, it might be Sulfoil X, but let's get sprayed once a week. But now, obviously, if we have a pest, then we'd be treating for them. That's in the veg. Once we go to flower doesn't get any spray, but I just went over this earlier though, but we just use the predator mites. And then we also every 2 weeks, we put in, hand water in recharge with nematodes. And that's basically our predators for the soil. And then nematode SF, whatever that is, Stradio, whatever. And then
I want to say Stradiolalaps, but I don't think it is.
Well, it's the SF. That's what I call it. So, and then the sachets, they're mixed. So it's a mix of 2 or 3 different predator mites, and we use 3 different ones. So I know we have Cucumaris. I know there's Californicus. I know there's Swarovski. I'm sure there's probably a couple others, but there's at least those 3 big hitters. And we usually don't have issues in flower. I mean, they're getting hit from every direction. And then we have a company that actually right out of Jackson, which is nearby, called Agro Air. They actually are a fan company that wants to get into making fans for grow rooms too. So they don't have a grow room. So they're working with us, and they've outfitted one of our 6 flower rooms with their fans, which are amazingly nice. And they're in there with these wind instruments and everything and tracking airflow. So it's really cool to see that kind of level of science going down in there, and them figuring out like what's the best airflow for a grow room. You know what I mean? That's something that you don't hear about. So that's really cool. They've actually developed one now. We don't have them yet, but they're going to be bringing them in. That they have, it's like a regular wall fan that sits off the side of the wall, like you would see a normal wall fan, except for theirs are all metal. And then it's mounted to a rail so that it's adjustable up and down. So as your canopy increases, if your canopy gets up into the airflow, you can actually, gives you room to come up with the airflow. So you could always have the airflow right where you want it. I thought that was pretty sweet. But as far as that, I think that's about it. Covers the IPM. I mean, unless we would get, if we were to get an actual pest, then obviously we would have, you know, we have actually MSDS sheets and everything, and a cabinet, and we have all our pest treatment in that cabinet. And so we would just find what pests we're looking for, or, you know, if it's, you know, thrips, botanicard might be something that we would use, especially if it was in veg and we knew it had enough time to where we'd be stripping those off and it wouldn't be an issue for a microbial. But if it's in flower, that's not an option. So it's so many situationals. I can't just say, you know, what we use unless I knew the situation.
I thought it's wild that it felt like you were sitting in my back pocket the last few years when you go, well, we make them, we come and change, and we turn into like scrubs, you know, because I was doing it. The only thing you left out in that spot, I was going to make them take a shower. Like, you know, take a shower, then change into the scrub. But as soon as you said, well, we have a changing room, I went, yes, because that's yes. But I didn't get, I love what I picked up from you, the sticky trap thing and the bleach, the boot, you know, but I was not going to put them into, you know, clogs or something. So I don't know about stepping in bleach with those. But
well, that's why we use the, what are those things called? The gate, or what are those little, they're like a clog. I can't remember. They're all rubber. That's why we specifically have those there.
Right.
Because
that's awesome.
The bleach won't eat those up.
So
that's just awesome.
Croc is what I was trying to think of.
We had another question. What are some of the alternatives to using mineral amendments like rock dust that might contain heavy metals? You know, as far as a micronutrient, you can always dose the micronutrients directly, you know, in usually a sulfate or sodium form. It depends on what you're talking about. It's kind of not an easy answer for that one.
Or you could do a KNF ferment. I mean, if you had a plant that was high in, but it would be tough because a lot of those plants, they might be high in one thing, but still have a bunch of micros.
Yeah. Purslane and moringa might be good options, but they also might have metals in them too. So depending on your soil. So, you know.
The best bet, you know, there's people out there that are really on their game when it comes to suppliers like Build a Soil. Jeremy out there at Build a Soil. He's got, I think, a basalt that comes right out of Colorado, I believe. That's going to be free of heavy metals. He he doesn't just go by their test. When he gets a product in, he sends it off for independent testing. So, I mean, that's available even online, but if that's like cost prohibitive, there's got to be places like even local quarries around your area that have some kind of a crushed rock that, and then if you have an egg extension somewhere near you, like for example, where I live in Jackson, they have an extension from Michigan State University where I can go down there and I could have something tested and they test it for me. So just get a small sample of it and just get it tested. And a lot of places, if it's sold like in a store, they're going to have that information probably on their website. Hopefully a test. If it didn't, I wouldn't buy it.
That's a good point. And the fact is that's, we go back to testing all the time. And see, you say, well, it's not really expensive, but it does add up when you're doing all the testing we're talking about. But if you spend that little extra dollars, think about the hundreds or thousands of dollars you would lose because you wouldn't do a $7 or a $20 test 5 times instead of just once a year. So that's I love that we keep riding on that testing. If you want to know what's wrong, get it tested.
And then one other trick you can shout out to Dude Grows, man. I love that show. But shout out Scotty. He did an interview with Michigan Matt, and they were talking about not only the microbes in. They had a couple bacillus, I believe, they brought up that helped sequester some heavy metals, but the fulvic and humic acids in recharge, or if you just use fulvic or humic acids by themselves, those will help tie off. They quoted the actual source of the study, but in that show, but will actually tie up all heavy metals, help tie it up. So obviously, if you have more heavy metal than you have the fulvic acid, you're still in trouble. But if it's something that you were worried about, I would maybe start watering in fulvic and or at least humic acid.
Awesome. Yeah, we had another question from chat. Someone asked about Roots organic soil. Roots organic soil, great for regular soil, not good for aquaponics because it does contain yucca, which will kill your fish if you aren't aware of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve always tells us, do not use yucca in your aquaponic system.
Yeah.
No, kill the fish.
Yeah, and that is commonly available at a lot of grocery stores. So now, if you want something, memory serves me right, Happy Frog and Forest Floor do not contain it. If you want something at least off the shelf. Trying to see any other questions from chat that we might have missed here. Well, we were answering the other ones.
We have a lot of questions from chat tonight. Must be all the Michigan grow boys up there.
What are some of the rabbit holes that you've been jumping down lately as far as topics?
Oh man, I love rhizophagy. I can't even say all these words now, but Jeff Lowenfels talks about how these bacteria enter through the root tip and travel through the plant, and the plant's defense mechanism is basically to blast, to oxidize it. So it blasts off its cell wall. So now you have this microbe traveling through the plant. Its cell wall is blasted off. All its nutrition that it had collected and basically ate, and is now released and available to the plant. The plant takes that. The microbe travels back through the plant to like the edge, or the close to the I guess you'd say the skin of the plant, or whatever, the outside edge of the plant, and it stimulates the plant to grow a root hair or grow a root. So a new root will grow, and then it'll have an escape route for this microbe. So the microbe will travel to the end of that root, come out into the soil, put its cell wall back on, and then go out and get more mineral or whatever it is that it's eating. And the process continues over and over and over again. And he talks about things like lichen and these plants that are mostly on rock. And they're like, how can these things grow? And he thinks it's mostly that these microbes are making this kind of reaction, and is giving all its nutrition or a vast majority of it from this rhizophagy relationship. I don't know what else to call it. It just blows my mind. It's just so amazing to me.
Oh yeah, and then I've been also on the similar note on endophytes, man. You think the mycorrhizae are trippy, man. Read up on some of the endophytes and some of the roles that they do, and how suddenly you realize that Fusarium and Botrytis are actually endophytes that are there most of the time and not actually strictly parasitic. And it just totally unlocks this whole other level of complexity to how you think about your microbes. It's so cool.
Yeah, it blows my mind how you get, or like you said, you could take something that's normally would destroy your plant and eat your plant up and just turn that off. And now it's either benign and doesn't hurt it at all, or it could even be beneficial now. Can you imagine a beneficial botrytis or something? Come on. That would be so cool.
And it is interesting that it's there. That it's there to be, it could be woken up or it could be locked out. That's very interesting.
Well, on the topic of beneficial botrytis, Mike West had talked about how, he was working with a group and they had done a ton of testing, and they noticed that the strains that actually were infected with powdery mildew and some of the other strains were actually much higher in a compound called CBT. So if you're after CBT production, you might actually intentionally infect your stuff and then separate it in post-processing. So it's really trippy, the different rabbit holes that you can go depending on what you're doing.
But don't do it to your whole grow.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm really intrigued. I'm experimenting in my home grow actually it's inside my mother tent. So I'm trying to do like a living soil situation, but my twist on the whole deal is I'm doing sub-irrigated, but I'm also doing a cocoa base rather than a peat base. So I want to say, everybody says cocoa is hydroponic and it's not organic. Screw you. It's an organic input. I'm going to do a living soil. So I did use Coco Loco, but so that's got worm castings mixed in. But I've got 2 of those going next to each other, and I've even had a top dressing of or a cover crop of clover in it, so it's like the living mulch. And then I take all my stems after harvest. I'll even take the sticks and chop them up and use them as almost like a straw mat to knock down the clover, and so they'll break down. I've got a bunch of worms in both of them. I've used them. I think I'm like 5 cycles in, and I'm only growing autoflowers in there because it's in my mother tent. The light cycles, I can't grow flower in there on an 18-hour schedule, so I throw autoflowers in there, and I pull little autoflowers every couple of months out of my mother tent and in the living soil. So there's really no input other than I might throw some top dresses down here and there. It's just a fun little project, and I'm loving it.
Well, I feel like a dumbass now, 15, 16, 17 years of teaching people, and I never thought about putting an autoflower in a flower tent. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool. People are flipping out right now. It's like, I haven't even seen anybody talk about that before. That's pretty cool idea. Got a little extra room. Hey, throw an autoflower in the corner,
Yeah, same thing in the bedroom. If you got a little corner of the bedroom, you got empty space and lights hitting it, take advantage of that light. Put a plant underneath that.
So another question, Chad. What do you guys think of living soil? I grow in all mediums right now, working super soil and cocoa mix, building a home aquaponic system to learn the basics. My favorite is doing living soil in a dual root zone. So doing living soil above living aquatic soil or living water. You know what I mean? So that's my favorite. And then if I'm not doing aquaponics, living soil is the way to go, at least in my opinion.
I think that's the way everybody's loving, you getting your good bugs and everything going on, your worms and everything. I mean, uh, regardless, like Steve's favorite, and it might be my favorite. We're going to do a bunch of trials this year, but the dual root zone is definitely extremely sound, and the fact that you can use the soil layer to implement or and modify things without getting it in and hurting the fish, just gives aquaponics such a broader spectrum of ability. But it's all natural. Basically, the top zone is natural farming. I think that's the way Steve handles it. It's like natural farming. So, anytime you can, go into that. So you make your KNF or your natural farming inputs, and sorry, got sideways there for a minute.
So, Steve, in those, have you ever done a living soil bed above your aquaponics, or do you have to replace that soil every time?
So
Like in those pots?
So I've done both no-till, where we've just cut the base off, dug a hole next to the old base of the and let the roots in there. And what we've had is a lot of the aquatic microbes will start to eat away the old root mass and end up causing some problems with the new root mass, just through normal decay. So what we'll actually do with the aquaponics systems here is, when we cut the plants down, I'll leave enough of a handle on top of the pot that I can still hold on to it. So we'll pull the pots out, we'll set them outside, we'll let them dry out for 3 to 5 days until they're totally dry. And then what'll happen is the soil layer will become kind of like baked together almost. And then I can pull that off, and most of the burlap and 85% of the roots will come out, and then we can shake off the hydrogen or the lava rock, depending on what we're planting in the bottom half. And then we can compost that for 1 to 2 grow cycles, and then make sure we add nematodes and some hypoaspis miles or some rove beetles to make sure it's all there. Add some IMO and some labs, and away we go. So That's kind of what we're doing here, and what is kind of standard procedure at most of the farms that I have, because once you get your main mass of soil, you're not really having to buy a whole lot of extra, as long as you have enough to cycle 3 or 4 cycles through.
Right.
And then, you can compost all your leaf material and everything else. And that's kind of amending that as well, and putting those same nutrients that the cannabis, needs, that's found in that tissue, back into that material. So,
You can
again,
actually
you have to
grow
know
what you got by recycling, because you keep adding more inputs to it, and it keeps breaking down into more and more soil action. Like Steve said, you don't have to keep buying it.
And someone else said, oh yeah, check out using Kefir labs. I do have videos on my channel on Kefir labs. I'm a big fan of that. The extra vitamin B from the Kefir is much better than traditional labs, in my opinion, for plant growth. So just doing a slightly watered down Kefir when you make your Kefir is very good for plant growth acceleration. Kefir in particular, again, has more vitamin B complexes than your traditional labs, which makes a huge impact on plant growth rate.
And you make some kombucha.
Everybody keeps bringing that up.
Kombucha.
Every time we talk about that, kombucha comes up.
So the only thing that Scoobies are very good for feeding your fish. Fish love to eat Scoobies, but there's a lot of sodium in kombucha, so it's not too plant friendly. So while it's cool to give your Scoobies to your fish as like a treat now and then, don't make it a weekly thing, and otherwise your sodium levels. Now, if you have tomatoes or celery, it'll taste great. I mean, if you're doing vegetables, it can be a great way to mildly supplement sodium in your system and get better flavor. But and for a lot of people that don't know, labs, which is in kombucha, also in kimchi, as well as cheese, yogurt, labs, kefir, all is will eat E. coli, salmonella, listeria, a lot of your things that will make you sick, and also make your plants sick. Powdery mildew can be a great way to prevent powdery mildew, not only on cannabis, but on squash and cucumbers, pumpkins, anything else that would traditionally be very susceptible to it in your home garden.
Yeah, it eats bad bacteria. It promotes good bacteria. It doesn't kill good bacteria. It kills bad bacteria.
So what type of microbial stuff are you guys doing up there, as far as probiotics or KNF or anything like that, if anything?
No, nothing. We're not even, as far as at work, it's all cocoa and can of nutrients, and we are using some new mill stuff. We're using, as far as microbials, we're using Recharge and Mammoth P and flour every 2 weeks or so. And I guess it is a microbial. I guess you could consider Botanic Garden microbial. But not, it's just a beneficial, but not in any nutritional way. But yeah,
you don't use lab at all?
What about
see at work? See at home I EM1. Yeah, I like EM1. I really like to honestly I like to process most of my stuff through my worm bin and just use that to give my plants a boost. Like, for example, on transition, I love when I'm going on the day one of flower, they're getting a scoop of fresh worm castings, and that's with the worms. I mean, I just pull it out of the bin with the worms, and it gets all the biology that comes with it. I get a lot of biology too, because when I suck up those leaves outside, I'm sure there's eggs and everything else all over that, but and that's a big portion of their diet. So I'm sure that the insects, I mean, I get so many like mold mites, and I get a lot of the hypostasis miles, and I'm not good on Latin, but
actually hypoaspis miles has been changed to Stradiolea scimatus. So.
Oh, great! Something even harder to say. Wonderful.
Holy shit! Okay, there's another good one.
But yeah, they just come for free. You know what I mean? I don't get those as benefit. You don't have to buy them. They just come for free from my bringing that stuff in from. Everybody's so afraid to bring stuff in from outside. Bring this stuff in from outside. I love looking at my worm bin. It's a little ecosystem. On the top of the on the top of, it's just 2 totes sitting inside each other, you know, with the holes drilled in it. But and I don't hardly ever I don't have ever gotten any leachate out of the bottom. Somebody asked me on a podcast the other day of what to do with leachate. I'm like, I don't even get it. I don't think it should be that wet. I don't know why you.
Oh, good point. Yeah. It shouldn't be that way. No.
Yeah. So, but so I have, like, if you take the top off, you can see there's a centipede. There's several centipedes that just patrol the very top because they'll actually go after the worms. So they keep the worms from escaping, and they're just patrolling the top. And then from the top down, you just see all the, you know, stuff I use to feed them. But once you push that off to the side, you get the darkest, blackest, finest, densest, you know, soil you've ever seen in your life. And as soon as you start digging into that and pull layers away, it's just like I get a half a scoop out of there, and then you just see like thousands of crawling things, just worms and mites and who knows what else. And it just puts a big smile on my face because I'm like, this is all good shit. And I just throw it in there. And it's funny because, you know, they hate the light. So as soon as you put it on top of the pot in the grow room, you know, and the light's being beaten down, everything just boom. And within seconds, you don't see a moving thing. It's already down inside underneath the mulch layer, and you don't see it again until. Now, I oftentimes will sometimes, now I water through these water tubes that go down through my sip containers because they go down to the bottom. And I just look down there with a flashlight and to see if it has water in there or not, see if it needs water. If it's empty, I give it water. If it's not empty, I leave it alone. But anyways, I looked down one time and I seen a worm just cruising by underneath there. I was like, all right. I just love seeing life. I just love seeing life in my soil.
Sounds like good soil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of combining Korean natural farming with aquaponics to maximize your microbials as well as biosecurity, you know, making sure you don't get anything nasty in there. I remember a couple of years ago, I was working with, I had just started doing Korean natural farming and finally started getting the IMOs and stuff right. And I had my cat came and took a shit in one of my clones. And I didn't realize it because it was underneath the canopy, and I found it when I was moving the clones of transplant. And here, the cat shit was completely colonized with IMO, and it was like completely not a problem. So it was this white mass, and it took me a minute to even figure out what it was. But you know, because I had dosed that, it had completely, you know, taken care of itself as far as a pathogen potential. So just goes to show you that, you know, dosing your right microbes can prevent pathogen problems even accidentally. So
I love shit like that too. It's like there's a friend I made, he's got a company called D's Bags, and they're just mushroom bags, you know, the CO2 mushroom bags. And when on my 2 living soil bed planters, I put 2 mushroom bags just sitting around the back of it, and then I actually cut slits so that the mycelium could spread past the bag into the, I'm hoping to coax it into the bed, you know what I mean? So I keep like cutting down, I'm letting the cover crop go real high, then I cut it down and I put it right next to the slits, and I just like, come on, I'm trying to coax it out. I want to try to pull that mycelium into the living soil. So far, no luck, but they're still alive in the bags, but they haven't jumped into the pots yet.
Huh. That's cool.
I just like playing around with stuff like that, just screwing around, seeing what happens. A lot of times when those bags are done, like they're spent and they've consumed whatever's inside and they're not making any more CO2, I like throwing those things in the worm bin because those worms just absolutely love that stuff. I think it's just like some kind of it's got to be some kind of grain. I don't know what kind, but those worms love it. Like they'll go through that mycelium and just go, oh, they just love that shit.
That's got to be interesting for the output of that soil. I mean, what you get back to compost or whatever you want to call it, you know, that's got to be.
Yeah, just like
so you're letting your worms eat your mycelium, and then so they're shitting out some byproduct that probably is pretty good. That will grow. That should expand.
It's got to be at least a good carbon source, I would imagine. I don't know.
Have you ever tried taking some of that and throwing it in a box to like harvest, like Chris Trump shows us? Like take some of that once your worms excrete that, and take some of it and throw it in a cedar box and cover it to see if it grows anything.
Well, no, so that won't actually grow much. It's actually pretty stripped down. In fact,
okay.
what's her name? Elaine Ingham actually mentions this in the in her talk at the Regen conference about how it's actually a great mycelium food, the worm juice. So
That's great too. That Dr. Lane. That's what I love about Dr. Lane. All y'all, she's old school and she's a soil food web and all. But once she was introduced and even doesn't totally believe in everything natural farming because of the aerobic anaerobic argument. But
it's a big misunderstanding, mostly derived by a guy named Scott, who's very misinformed.
Right, but what I was getting at is Dr. Lane checks this stuff out. That the things that what's so cool when you bring up something like that, it shows that Dr. Lane went outside her comfort. Well, I'm not sure what most mycelium's outside her comfort zone, but I think you mentioned she was looking into other ideas and then comparing it, and that's so great about her that she doesn't just she's not in a box.
We had another thing from Chad is I've been using 100% insect frass and UVA supplemental light to try and get more gland heads. Does that make a difference? Insect frass, the chitinase actually has been shown to increase trichome production. The plant actually thinks it's under attack by insects. It detects it as an insect attack and will increase the gland head size and production in order to create a sticky mass, basically create a yellow sticky card on the outside of it. I actually saw this the other day on a non-cannabis plant, but it was a similar thing, and I regret not taking a picture of it with my microscope. But many plants actually will. I was actually a honeydew plant, a little Durasa, but it works exactly the same way as a honeydew plant does, or Durasa, where those insects get stuck to those gland heads and prevents those insects from being able to feed on the plant. Well, the plant, when it detects that chitinase, will hormonally increase the production of the stickiness of it, again, to try and defend itself away from insects that it thinks that it's detecting. Even though it's not directly insect attack, the chemical signal is being triggered for that, which again, anytime you can trigger those types of signals for the immune system of the plant, you're going to increase terpene production as well as potency of the plant overall.
Super interested in you saying that, because have you used insect frass yourself, and have you noticed a difference terpene wise as far as either a more pronounced terpene or a whole new terpene you hadn't noticed before in the plant?
I haven't. So I've used insect frass a bunch. I've used a little bit in soil mix, but I'll tell you what I have used a lot in lately, and something that I would love to talk more with Zenthanol on. And maybe I can give you a question to take back with you to growing with your fellow growers, is to bring up the whole idea of doing IMO collection specifically for chitinase feeding microbes. So you would do IMO the way you traditionally do your indigenous microorganism collection, which for those that don't know is you add rice into a cedar box or other wooden box, put it out in the forest for 4 to 8 days depending on temperature, and collecting the saprophytic fungi and other beneficial fungi and bacteria that live in the forest there. Well, what we were doing in Africa was we were doing that, but taking 30 to 35% of that rice and making it insect frass. Okay, so mixing the rice and insect frass before we cook the rice. Okay, then cooking the rice with the insect frass on the stove with everything else. Oh, you're mute. Your mic's not working.
Oh, sorry. I gotta stop you 1 second. What did that smell like? Cooking the insect frass with the rice.
It is not the most. I mean, definitely don't do it in your home kitchen. Do it in a friend's kitchen or work kitchen.
Yeah.
Do it in the
friend's kitchen or like an enemy's kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah. Or anyways, so it's not that bad, right? Because it's in water, right? So it's not too bad. But it definitely, I would say, is less than pleasant. But you cook that together and it infuses that chitinase into the rice, and that gives you a huge base to collect microbes. And if you mix it right, now you have a whole amount of chitinase base to collect those microbes and a starch. Okay, so now you put that out, you do your traditional IMO collection the same way you would, and then you take that to IMO 2 and then directly into a liquid IMO, or turn it into IMO 3 or IMO 4, and then to a liquid IMO, depending on, you know, whatever your goal is with what you're doing. And then taking that liquid IMO and spraying that on the plants as well as the ground around the plants. Man, did that just knock the living daylights out of the grasshoppers we had over there.
Okay.
Wow.
I wanted to know where you were going.
Yeah, it
And at
completely
the same time,
obliterated.
it probably would have a slight,
Yeah.
I don't know, with that many far trips down the IMO lane, but it should still have some slight NPK at that time too.
Absolutely, yeah. You're still getting a lot of plant beneficials that you're applying, but you're also, you know, basically applying a parasite, for an insect parasite to your plants that has no negative impact on your plants at all. So this and in Africa, where am I going to go get Basania bavaria? Where am I going to go get, Isla, whatever the other one is? Or where am I going to get Bacillus subtilis? Like, good luck with that shit, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. So we have to make a lot of our own stuff there and source our own stuff and culture our own stuff off the property, because I don't have an option, right? It's just, it's not even about, okay, cool. It's that it's going to take me $3,000 to actually get it to the farm for $1,000 order, right? Like, it's just not going to work, like logistic wise.
And as is often the case with any kind of a microbial or, well, this is an enzyme in this case, but the fresher you can get it, the more effective it seems to be. So making it yourself just makes sense.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of these microbes simply can't be shelf stabilized. They don't have a dormant spore form. You know, think about it in Africa. When does it have to have a spore form short of a drought, right? It doesn't, because the temperature wise, it's fine year round. It doesn't have to have that there. So you might even have microbes that simply cannot be, you know, stabilized or cannot be without thousands or millions of dollars of research that you could just grow in your backyard for the cost of some rice, a little bit of sugar, and you're good to go, right? And some insect frass. So this is something I think, you know, especially if you're an organic person, be it soil or aquaponics, and want to kind of jump down the rabbit hole with the pest management, it's something I highly suggest. And we tried both doing it with the IMO collection and then adding the insect frass at the point of IMO 3. And then also, and that was what Chris Trump suggested. And then we also tried it with adding it to the rice in the beginning, and I found that it worked significantly better when we did the IMO with the insect frass at the point of collection. Again, it has the food source it wants to feed on directly there, so you're pulling those up. You know, it makes sense.
Yeah, right? You're doing it in the cooking. It's going in every basically, essentially every grain of rice is getting some insect frass. So it's
a little, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that helps a lot. So that really, again, if someone wants to jump down the rabbit hole of that, you know, there you go. I gave you a new thing to use in your garden.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'll have to get a little 1-burner fucking heater to put it out on the back porch or something and cook it outside.
Someone had a question on our opinion on powdered nutrients versus liquid as far as veg and bloom.
I mean, if in a perfect world, if I have to use nutrients and that's my option, I want powdered, because why am I paying for water? I have water available to me. I don't need to pay for it.
Yeah, no, I would highly suggest always going with powdered nutrients. If you're buying a bottle, you're paying for branding, bottles and water. You could, a lot of these, if you look at them, they're at 1%, 3%, 5% on nutrients. So you're so what, maybe 7% of that entire bottle is actually nutrients, and the rest of that is water that you're paying for to ship. Why are you doing that? I mean, it's just goofy to me. Like, it's cool if you have no idea what you're doing, but once you get going and you're dangerous and you got a couple of runs under your belt, you know, look at some of the nutrient calculators that are out there. Look at some of the different, you know, solutions you have out there. If you're doing hydro, not so much for aquaponics, because as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one that has a lot of those. But for hydroponics and for soil, certainly there's huge data tables on all kinds of things for that stuff, and companies out there that have published stuff as well. So again, you pay for the powders, or once you learn to do it for yourself, you can pay about 10% of what they're doing, what you'd pay for it at a store. But again, that's experience, and you have to know how to balance nutrients, which is its own separate skill.
And,
Now,
and yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I had
we
to
will
hit
have
the head real quick, but I wanted to say with the I wanted to track just one more comment on the IMO with the insect frats. What do you call it? Yeah. What Russ was bringing up, I do believe it would work at any stage of IMO from what we've learned from Chris and all. I mean, because every stage of IMO is good. It's just Steve's getting to play where he's going beyond a lot of what people get to know.
Fine-tuning it, yeah.
Getting to do stuff. But yeah, I think it'll work anytime. And yeah, and I agree too. Powder. Yep. I yield.
So I'll have a lot of the aquaponic stuff in my book coming out, as far as dosing tables, nutrients, minerals, why and when you should use something over something else, and all that stuff is in the mineral section. And we have both mineralization through ferments and teas, as well as mineralization through direct mineral addition, and then mineralization through fish waste mineralization. So we'll kind of cover a whole bunch of different ways that you could do nutrients, depending on what your options are, where you are in the world, and how much money you want to spend in it, and how organic. You have some people that are much more towards the religion of organic, and then you have the people in the science of organic, and then you have people that just want to make a profit, right? So it just depends on where you are on the spectrum.
And some people just want to grow excellent plants no matter what.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to grow excellent plants with me having to interfere the least. That's kind of my attitude when it comes to my home grow. I want to, but I'm not saying automation so much, but I'm just saying I want the plant to just grow. I don't want to have to spoon feed it. That's what I do at work all day.
So do you top super crop, or do you just leave them alone?
No, I will. I do all kinds of things too. I will bend the shit out of plants. I like to manhandle that. I like to manhandle them and make them tough. It is Spartan Grown, so you got to be a Spartan if you're going to survive in the arena. So I make them tough. I don't know. I find that early on, when if you bend a plant or you super crop a plant, always, if you followed that branch to the top, it was normally, if not the biggest, one of the biggest buds. So that obviously tells me that, just like a broken bone, it grows back stronger. And for whatever reason, the nutrient can flow faster or whatever because of that bigger area. Whatever the reason, the plant does better that way. So I do that on purpose. So I will bend the plant all over the place to get it to be a nice flat canopy for me. And I think bending is good. It's just going to build stronger plants.
We had someone ask you, grow an experiment with 13 or 11, 13 lighting on flower. Have you ever tried that?
Yes, I have. Right now, well, I haven't yet. I thought I suffered a little bit in yield, and as far as phenotypical expressions, I see where the advantage of that is. But in my situation, I don't know. I like to give them the light at the end. I have one light. Of my 3 lights in the flower room, one of them I have control over with just my phone. It's the Raging Kush, and it has an app where I can mess with the light timer and everything. And even the colors. I can change reds and blues and all that. And so I do adjust the intensity at the end of flower. I bring the total intensity down, and I also remove reds at the end. I also remove reds at the beginning to reduce stretch. And but as far as running the only 11 hours on, not technically. But I am doing weird things. I'm doing a half hour. It ramps up from, it's a sunrise, sunset too. So I don't know. I'm doing a lot of weird things with lighting, but I'm not doing the less hours per se.
I think that's only useful when you've got a situation and you need to finish right now. So you sacrifice the yield. So that's
so actually, there's some really good studies that have done I don't remember it was out of Switzerland or Israel. I think it was Israel. There's a white paper out there where they did some phenotypic expression on mainly around terpene expression and THC expression. I think were the two total terpenes and THC. And it actually showed that there was an increased gene expression on the terpenes at 11:13 than at 11:30 and 12:12. So, if you're, trying to maximize everything, then that's what you go for. But, ideally maybe start it off at 11, 12 and a half or 12, and then, slowly reduce that by a few minutes a day over the course, or a minute or two a day over the course of your flower cycle. In a perfect world. Now, good luck setting that shit up with your timers unless you're completely automated out the asshole. But we're talking, perfect world setup here.
So what do you think what about studies that have possibly where we talk about we start at 16 and say every month we drop an hour? Wouldn't that possibly bring up the same kind of terpene expressions, even maybe better? Because we actually took the time to shorten the days,
Well, you'd actually be shortening the day by half of what it was. So you lose about a minute a day in nature. So you'd be doing it about twice the speed of nature.
Well, you could actually do it less than when I say from 16 to 15, actually we could probably go even shorter than that, like cutting off 15 minutes and 2 or 3 times a week, where it would eventually, because it's funny, the cannabis plant works out to where you can use these different timings. Well, and you can literally go from 16 to 12:12 in a growth cycle, and then leave it at 12:12 in flower, and you have reduced. I find my personal opinion is, I think any way you grow, if you grow well, you're going to have good results. If you know what you're doing and you do a good job of maintaining your grow. But I find that it reduces overall stretching, as if the stretching takes part, in cycles instead of all at once at the time. So you don't get that much stretch once you're down to 12:12 or even 11:13 for those that you prefer that.
Stretch is predetermined by genetics. It's not going to affect that at all. So,
but the problem is when we talk about things like this is that when you say, do you use 12 hours in your light cycle? Well, it's hard to answer questions like that, because what light are you talking about? Because DLI makes a huge difference. The intensity of these new LED lights, you can get away with running only 11 hours, but you're still hitting it with more lights than I am at 12. You know what I mean? So it all depends. There's so many factors. It's hard to answer a question straight.
Absolutely. There's another question. Spartan Grown, technically both of you and Steve grow in SIPs / dual root zones. How often do you apply water / tea / fertigation through topsoil?
I say occasionally. I'm usually reading the plants. The plants tell me what they need, but there are key times where I will do, like maybe on a transition, or maybe like my cutoff time at week 3 of flower, I do a top dress. But usually, I would say maybe on average, on the most, once a week. At the very most, once a week, it might get some kind of a top dress. It's probably closer to once every 2 weeks. And that's usually towards towards the flower cycle. Usually doesn't get anything in veg. That's as far as nutrient. Sure. I might do water, straight water. But.
Oh, okay. Sure. So I'll fertigate through the water in the aquaponic system, and then at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. It depends on what I'm doing. Calcium and potassium, I'll dose those, and iron pretty regularly, maybe even more, every other day or every day, depending on what it is in the system and the size of the system and the ratio of the fish and then the current nitrogen levels and a whole bunch of other variables. But general top feeding, depending on the size of the plant, I would say twice a week when they're smaller. And then when they're later into flower and they've really packed the upper half of those roots, pots up with roots, I would say, sometimes even 3 times a week. It just entirely depends on the moisture level of that soil.
And sometimes you might implement something an amendment because you have a problem. So if you have a deficiency or something you notice, that would change your regular schedule.
Yeah, but usually I'll just amend it during the regular schedule. We had another question. You ever try water kefir? Kind of like kombucha, less vinegary. I have not done anything with water kefir. Something that I definitely want to get into. It's just one of those microbes that just I haven't seen any information on it on plant growth. Then it's like in the pile. I have an Excel sheet of a bunch of stuff I'd love to try microbially that I just haven't gotten around to. It is in there, but not something that I've had a time to really, time or money or energy to go with. The last year has been pretty psychotic, I think, for most people in the cannabis industry for one reason or another. Especially since October, it's been quite the roller coaster. So, all right. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions from chat here. Anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap things up? We've had you for quite a while.
No, I just would shout out to the Michigan Bros Grow Show because that's those are
Oh
my.
yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit quickly about the different shows that you do? You do the
Yeah.
Michigan Grow Show, and then the what was it, the growing with
my fellow growers, but that's on the Cheap Home Grow channel. So that one's a little confusing because the channel name is different than the show. But that one's really information dense. So the Cheap Home Grow channel, for me, that was like super learning. We have some really good minds on that. We have people with botany degrees. We have Matthew Gates, who's an entomologist. We have some really good minds. Brandon Rust, who's I'm really impressed with him because he's doing organically grown living soil at a huge commercial level. Like you, Steve. And so I love seeing that because how many times do you hear that you can't do that? You know what I mean? So that's awesome. We have a lot of other guests. I'm forgetting people. Can Grow from Canada. I love getting perspectives from all over. You know what I mean? I just love getting different perspectives. So that show's special to me because of that. The Michigan Bro Grow Show, we do a live show every Sunday where we just hang out. We don't ever have usually even have topics. We just show up and you can tell that we're friends though, because it doesn't matter. We don't need to show up. We don't have to have a topic. We just hang out, we talk grow, and we have a good time. And then on Friday nights, I try to get on. I usually am on the Grandmaster Level show now, and he runs his show on YouTube and is through Zoom. And I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. I don't know. I just try to get on all the shows I can because I just love them. Usually on Tuesdays, I try to get on Fumidor is doing a show too, but his is only for an hour. It's like a smoke sesh. So that was a cool show too. I think that's all. Oh, Eagle Gardens. I almost forgot about him. Talking shit with Eagles. I did one episode with him, but I'm usually in his chat for the first little bit. Then it's way past my bedtime and I got to go to bed.
Yeah, it's always awesome to have support our other growers and stuff like that. I was just over on both the Do Grows and the Growcast, and I've been talking to some other people. We have a couple of other podcasters in the pipeline that we're looking to bring on the show, so we're always happy to do that. We're about to hit our 200th episode next week. I've been trying to figure out who we're going to do it. I've reached out to a couple of cooler guests that have been on the list of people that we haven't never gotten around to getting on the show. And I'm fingers crossed, desperately trying to get a particular person on. But if we can't get them on, we'll do something cool. My other thought was maybe bringing a whole bunch of podcasters on and just doing like a jam powwow with a whole bunch of other people that also put out content. So that was the other idea I had for that. But we haven't quite decided on what we're going to do for our 200th episode yet. But it is crazy to think about, Marty and I doing this. Marty and I originally met arguing over whether or not how to grow aquaponics, became really good friends because we realized both of us were the only two people intelligent enough to actually have an argument over that conversation. And then decided to make this podcast. So it's really funny how people meet in this industry and then become some of the best friends. It can be sometimes over a rivalry and be some of your best buddies a year later. So it's and then years later, 4 or 5 years later, you're like on the 200th episode of your podcast and you're like, what the hell happened? So
Well, congratulations,
always.
man. That's fucking awesome. And you know what? It's cool that you're still doing this because, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, they're here for a little bit, then gone. Here for a little bit, then gone. So it's awesome to have some OGs that are still doing it. And 200 episodes, man, that's badass.
Well,
Congratulations.
and to me too, this is how I stay current on the industry, right? I can pull people on that I want to ask questions or learn from, or you know, people that are I know a lot about something that I don't know, you know, I can pick their brain or have them talk about a whole topic or turn us on to topics. I can't tell you how many rabbit holes we've gone on and then invited a new guest on the show to explain that one, you know, over and over again. We've had that happen. So it's really cool.
And what I've loved is that we get PhDs and experts that are respected all around the globe, and we get to talk to them, you know, person to person, not like somebody that bought their book or somebody you see at a show. You know, we get to really be down home and be with them. And I want to say I have to thank Steve because my current partner and my recurring or my reconstructive success for my farm is from being on the show and then the conference, the regenerative conference, growing and meeting somebody even that they live down the road from me because of the conference. And then I also want to say that 420 was my 3rd year anniversary on this show for, you know, which I can't believe that Steve never kicked me off yet, you know. So we didn't do a show that night. And I huh? Oh, you didn't try. You just an asshole sometimes, you know. But yeah, deep down, Steve's a big fuzzy, warm guy, no matter how pissed off he gets. But yeah, he's got a lot on his mind. We get a lot on our minds, and we tend to you know, forget. But I just wanted to say I wanted to say that earlier tonight, so I felt it was a good time to get that in. That um, it's been really cool getting to talk to, you know, all the great people. I've got an idea for the 200 show too. You might be able to pull off if those other heralded get or the I can imagine who's there's one in particular I know he's been trying to get on, but yeah, we can't catch up with him. But I can't imagine who else. But I've got somebody I'm not going to say, but I know I'm going to suggest to Steve after the show. And you know, anyway.
We'll have to get you on one of our shows there, Steve. We'll get you on. I'm sure the bros would love you over there, and I know Cheap Home Grow would love you on there. Last time you came in the chat, they all were fanboying you when you were in chat.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have you guys on, and we'll definitely figure it out. If anyone has any other suggestions for our guests, let us know, and we'll consider that. Shoot me an email at potentponics@gmail, and we'll consider them. But yeah, all right. Well, I think we'll about start wrapping up the show. Do you want to tell everybody how to find you and anything, and you know the shows that you're on?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram, just Spartan Grown. That's usually where I check. Or, well, yeah, that's probably the best place. Or pretty much a lot of the any of the weed tube stuff. You'll probably about 50% of the time. If I'm not in chat, I'll be on the show. I try to either be on the show or in the chat, one or the other. So, but Michigan Bros Grow Show on Sunday with Cheap Home Grow also, and then Fridays I've got the GML show, and then on Saturdays I got Frugal Force. So you can check me out at all those places, all on YouTube. And thanks for having me on the show, man. I really enjoyed myself. I was a little intimidated because you're so smart, and I was like, man, what am I even going to say? But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to smoke. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have a good time. That's what happened, man. So thank you.
We had awesome questions from chat tonight too.
Yep.
It was really great.
You acquitted yourself very well. I mean, you're smarter than you give yourself credit for, I would say.
Well, thank you.
Well, all the growers, like what all the community that we have, you know, it's amazing. They don't think there's, you know, you don't have a title. You know, you're just a guy, you know, a guy from Michigan, like a guy from Jersey, you know, you're just a guy, you know, and it turns out, you know, and you can talk with agricultural people in your state and people at the agricultural colleges, and they don't have a clue what you're talking about half the time. So yeah, never feel bad about what you're doing. That's how I look at it. You know, I get a kick out of it, actually. I love to teach those people. I love to call up the county agent and said, you ever heard of this?
Oh, I get a kick out of that too, man. Or go down to your son's high school and educate their science teacher. I
Yeah,
love
well, and they're
that.
starting to try to have greenhouses and agricultural programs now for the first time ever. Of course, if you know, well, I'm not going to get political. I'm just saying they're trying to have this in all the schools now, and it's the best thing that could happen in this world because the average age of a farmer is 60 years old, or like my age. And when we die, all you guys are going to be getting your food from pot growers, because they're going to only be the ones that know how to do it, you know. You mute me again, Steve. I can't hear anybody. Oh.
Oh, Steve's muted.
Oh, why don't you tell everybody how to yeah, I had mute all and muted myself and everyone else. It was kind of funny.
Okay.
I was trying to click boxes over. Anyways, why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to and how to find you, Roger?
Well, I've been up to after being ill for a while, for several years, and things. We're regenerating my farm, and for those of you new to the show, I'm USDA certified grower, and I was a producer for Whole Foods for many years, and I've been a cannabis moderator since 2004, starting at cannabis.com, and you can find me at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, and it's one of the greatest. It's a really great forum, and got a blog with 500 to 600 articles. It's very informative, great seed bank. Really friendly forum too. We don't allow backbiting and arguing and politics and shit to ruin the forum. When you come there, you learn how to grow and you meet people and you can have fun. It's one of the only forums I would recommend anymore, because I've even gone around and looked at them, and it's really sad that the old way of everybody having fun and teaching has gone away. So when I got to start running the forum in was it 2015 2014, I implemented strict policies about everybody trying to be decent to each other, and not to be assholes, because so many times people that know something about growing want to treat a beginner like an asshole, and it's just not right, because we need more growers, because more growers means more food and more people getting taken care of in this world. So that's where you can find me, though. ILGM. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I don't do Instagram much because I think you only really can communicate if you post a picture or something, and it's made for phones. So I'm more on Facebook, or you can Roger Latewood. You can check me out, Roger Latewood, on Facebook. That's probably the easiest thing. Or come down, join ILGM, and look for Latewood. Yeah, and say, hey, I heard you on the show. So, we'd be glad to help you out. And, it'd be day to day. We got moderation staff that generally, if you ask a question, you'll get an answer that day. You'll get somebody to support you. If it's not our members, be some of our staff. So I don't generally go out a lot to talk about the website too much, but yeah, I just felt like it tonight. We planted almost 500 plants today on our farm, and we are excited about the fall and winter harvest. I can't wait to about 30 or 40 days when I get some of those diva cucumbers. Well, this was all food we planted. We planted over 400 plants of food to try to start up a couple things, which we'll talk about later. And I'm not going to go on and on. So really enjoyed Russ tonight, and really big time. And shout out to you guys from Michigan. If any of you guys know me from when we were at the conference, I lost touch with most of you guys because Instagram's a clusterfuck. But if you want to get a hold of me, there you go. You can get me at Roger Latewood, or at Latewood at ilovegrowing.com, or you can get me at Roger Latewood on Facebook, and we'll hook up again.
Shout out to the Embracing Organics guys in chat, and all the guys from the the other shows that have been joining us over the course of the chat, and always good to see everybody in chat as well. My name is Steve from Ponics. I also work with Organic Innovations in Oklahoma. If you need clones or concentrate, we got you. We also occasionally have flower when we have fresher harvests, but we sell out of that usually within 48 hours. So as soon as that's ready. So get on our list if you're looking for that in Oklahoma. And then if you're looking for concentrates or clones, definitely hit them up at you can get them at sales at organic-ok.com. If you need more
Honestly, I
information.
love embracing organics too. Quick, sorry, Steve, but
yep. Yeah. So you can also I've been working here on the grow, getting everything ready for spring. We have 5 acres we're prepping, getting all the clones going and getting everything else prepped, and then just been getting everything going. Been today in particular picking lots of chanterelles. I mean, the colors on these are just unreal. The camera actually does it justice for once. But yeah, other than that, again, just cloning, making sure everything's running. We have a new pump coming. We're going to do good old fashioned Nelson and Played, tear up all the plumbing and actually make it work like a functional system. For anyone who doesn't know, Nelson and Played sells completely garbage systems that are plumbed by someone that, I don't know, was drunk with a box of crayons. Anyways, so I'm actually going to do a video series for all the people that have been misled by that company, and how to actually cut the plumbing, where to cut the plumbing, and how to actually make it a functional system that actually is fully mineralizing all the fish waste rather than throwing away 80+% of the minerals that you generate in the system, like the way that they intended to do it with the original design. So that's coming. We're going to increase the flow rate of our fish tanks by at least 6 or 8 times, which is going to help. And then the system itself is going to turn over 2 to 4 times more a day than it was currently. So it's going to make the plants are already averaging 2.3 inches a day in growth and veg. We're going to get even better than that once we actually get proper circulation in there. So just to give you an idea of how quickly we can crank out ungodly amounts of clones. We can generate 10,000 plus clones a week, no problem. 20,000 clones once they have any kind of size on them. So it's quite ridiculous. The speed we can get.
I bet you some hemp operations would be interested in that. You know what I mean? Just to have the consistency.
Oh yeah, and we're actually hiring some people on now. It took me a minute to kind of prove to them that this is the kind of the better business model, but we have really good, we can crank plant production out. We can flower stuff in our flowering rooms. We can put the COAs up for the clones that we have, and it makes a really nice business model where we can kind of scale up to any kind of customer, unless they want more than 10 or 20,000 clones within, a 1 to 2 week period. We can handle them, as an individual customer. So it's quite nice. And really, if you have a DWC system and you're looking to convert it over to a cannabis based company, nurseries really are the way to go for that type of facility, unless you're going to go ahead and replumb it. That is the way to maximize the profitability of that type of system for aquaponics specifically. So but again, that's a whole other bag of worms, and we've already been going on the show for 2 hours, so we'll cover that in a different episode. But anyone out there that's interested that can follow me. Oh, also shout out to Roger at True Aquaponics. If you have an aquaponic system out there and you're struggling with your nutrients, visit Roger at trueaquaponics.com. Him and I will can get you set up with a nutrient subscription. We will test your water and adjust your nutrients on a per nutrient basis to make sure that those fish are cared for and those plants are cared for as best as possible, regardless of whether or not you're growing lettuce or cannabis. We can get you or organic certified or not. We can balance that for you in an easy to dose, rip open and pour in solution. So be sure to check that out. Aside from that, hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content, and support Spartan Grow on his shows and where he puts out content as well. Because remember, the number one enemy of our industry is education. So let's all fight it together. All right, we'll catch you guys again next week. And actually on Thursday, we have Mr. Bob Hemphill, the great breeder from California. So will be awesome. Thanks a lot. Take care.